Hello, welcome to Model Aviation Live. I'm your host, Jay Smith, executive editor of Model Aviation and Park Pilot magazines. If you joined us last month, you may recall that I talked a little bit about Atlantis Models, a plastic model company in New York, and that they had brought back the old kits for Snoopy and the Red Baron that were released about 50 years ago. And I'm happy to tell you that we're going to have a write-up in the magazine about it in the Worth a Closer Look section. You can see it there on screen to give you a better idea of both those models. They're snap together models, easy to build, come with the decals. So I know we don't typically have plastic models in the magazine, but I thought that they would really resonate with people. I can tell you they really resonated with me because I can remember when they were available originally. And actually, our previous ad rep, Mark Lanterman, also has a set on his desk. So I thought it'd be kind of neat to showcase that. And as I said last month, they have a lot of the old Aurora kits, and they have a lot of the older Revell kits. So there's all kinds of interesting kits that they've brought back that have been out of print for quite a while. So definitely be sure to check out the upcoming review that's in Model Aviation magazine. And looks like we've got best regards from Brazil. Hey, thank you so much for tuning in. Happy to have you here with us on Model Aviation Live. Also, this kind of segues a little bit, possibly, but into model making. So I don't know if you're familiar, but a lot of times there's TV shows like creature feature shows. I grew up watching creature feature shows, and trust me, this will get back to model aviation. But I grew up watching creature feature shows, and for me, the host was a gentleman named Dr. Paul Bearer. This is him. So when I was growing up and was a kid, this gentleman, Dr. Paul Bearer, would be on the local TV on the weekends for creature features. And why I bring that up is because I recently was watching a movie called Fright Night, which is a film in which a vampire moves in next to a gentleman who's in high school, and nobody believes him. So he goes to the host of a weekend horror TV show or creature feature show, and tries to enlist his help, and that's played by Roddy McDowall. But the reason I wanted to bring this up to you about Fright Night is I was watching the special features after I watched the film, and there was a gentleman on there who was talking about being a special effects and makeup artist, and on the desk as he was talking, I noticed an AMA sticker. So I paused the video and was looking at this picture of this gentleman. His name is Steve. His name's Steve Neal. And I was looking at this picture of him, and there he is there. So I just took a picture of my screen to share with you. So this is Steve Neal, and he's on the special features for Fright Night. And just a little bit to the left of his hand, there's an AMA sticker on his desk. I know it's a little hard to see, but it's propped up. So I thought, wow, he's got all these neat models, and he worked on Fright Night. So I looked him up, and it turns out that he worked on Star Trek, the original series. He did Spock's ears. He worked on Star Trek 6 and did all the Klingon makeup. He worked on Ghostbusters. He worked on Fright Night. He worked on Planet of the Apes TV show. So I looked him up, and he actually is a current member of AMA, and I've since conversed with him, and we will have an interview with Steve, in an upcoming issue of Model Aviation. He's going to be the I Am the AMA. So it was a really neat situation to be watching the movie and then watch the special features and find out an AMA member was part of that. Because, as I've said before, we have so many neat members that, we might not know about. So as Hobby View said, Steve Neal flies RC planes and RC subs along with plastic models. Yes. I looked at his blog. He talks about flying in California, and he makes masks for like Planet of the Apes. I mean, there's so many things he's involved in. And so we have so many interesting members, and it doesn't have to be part of TV or movies. I mean, musicians and aeromodelers, obviously, and people in the aerospace industry, and astronauts and pilots. And I mean, obviously all walks of life take advantage of our hobby, but it's always interesting to, find out that people are are interested in our hobby or are members. So I'm excited to share an I Am the AMA in the future with him. He's already got the questions, and I should have his answers back next week. So this all kind of segues. So the next thing that this kind of segues into is back in 2018, I went to an event that's called Wonderfest. It's in Louisville, Kentucky, and the event is around model making, and it's also around prop making and special effects. And so most of the guests that come to the convention, they're people who work on, film and TV and whatnot. They also have the largest, they advertise it as the largest model contest. So about 750 entries in their contest. So the pictures that you're seeing now are some of the models that were entered into their model contest. And they have different categories. They have aviation and space, and, they have prop making. So I took a bunch of pictures, and I'm just sharing a few with you. So it was the first time I'd ever went, and I went to meet Matt Irvine, who worked on Doctor Who. He did special effects on Doctor Who, but I also met many other people that work in the film industry, and they even had the video game there for Last Starfighter. If you've ever seen the movie Last Starfighter, they had the video game where the person plays and ends up becoming a starfighter because he's so good with the game. So it's a really neat event. So I'm going to go back again this year. It's the event takes place in June 4th and 5th in Louisville. Here you see the picture of the Lost in Space robot. That's a full-size Lost in Space robot, but they make it look like the Aurora model. So down by his foot is the actual Aurora model, and they trying to recreate it. In the picture on the left, you can see the Last Starfighter video game in the background. In the middle of the screen in the back is the Last Starfighter video game. The reason I'm sharing this with you is because on Fridays leading up to the show on the weekend, they actually do classes where they can teach prop making and different things. So I've enrolled in a class to learn more about airbrushing and painting and dry brushing. So I'm going to actually be in a 6-hour class on Friday with 2 instructors, and I'm going to be painting a statue, and from start to finish with instruction. And it's sponsored by one of the airbrush companies who will be providing the airbrush and all the paint and all that. So I kind of want to share it because I'm hoping to get some nice tips and techniques, learn some extra things that I could bring to the hobby as far as possibly weathering airplanes, painting pilot figures. I mean, I've done some of that in the past, but I'm hoping by taking this class, I'll be able to, have some takeaways from it. So if that's something that anyone be interested in and is in the Louisville, Kentucky area, they have 2 huge dealer rooms, and they sell everything you can imagine, from resin kits and plastic model kits and all the supplies. And there's people sell artwork there, but as I said, you also get to meet some of the people that work in film. The woman who played Judy Robinson will also be there from Lost in Space. Marta Kristen is one of the guests, as well as Greg Nicotero, who has worked on Creepshow and The Walking Dead, and John Alves, who flies full scale. There's definitely a lot of neat guests. Nicholas Meyer is going to be there, who worked on Star Trek 2, 4, and 6. So I'm going to be excited to share with you after I get back maybe some tips or ideas that I learned from airbrushing. It's www.wonderfest.com right there on the screen. This event has been going on for at least 10 years. I went for the first time in 2018, but they have it every year, except I guess it's been canceled the last 2 years due to COVID. So definitely, if you're, interested in that show and that's something that you might want to travel to, if you do go, I'll be there. Hopefully, if you see me at the event, please don't hesitate to come up to me and introduce yourself, and we can talk aeromodeling. So anyway, wanted to share all that. I'm also excited because last month we had Gerry Yarrish lined up to join us on the show, and unfortunately there was a technical difficulty and we had to postpone, but that has been resolved. Jerry's with us here today, so I'd like to go ahead and welcome him to the show. Hey, Gerry.
Hello. How are you?
Great. It's so great to have you on the show and be able to talk to you, because something really big happened last month. You retired from Model Airplane News after 31 and a half years.
Yes, this is true. I don't know where the time went, but I started working with Model Airplane News and the parent company Air Age Publishing at the time, September 10th, 1990. And I just retired last March 10th. So exactly 31.5 years. And it's just been a wonderful experience. I've met so many wonderful people, and I've learned so much from the people I worked with. Um, the big thing, like I said, is I don't know where 30 plus years has gone.
Well, I'm sure that the majority of people that are watching know who you are, but for those that maybe don't know your origin story as it applies to our hobby, tell us how you got started in this hobby.
Well, going way back before working for Model Airplane News magazine, my father, Edward Carl Yarrish, was a modeler back in the day when they used uh, crystal sets and made their own radios and things like that. And when I was about 6 or 7, my father was always building model airplanes, and he bought me my first Gellows kit, which was it's either a Gellows or a Sterling. I can't remember exactly, but it was a rubber band powered SPAD 13 model, and that's where it started. And I never looked back. When I was going into high school and all those in the early 70s, I the you can see right there my very first model, first RC scale model is the SIG clipped wing Cub, and that was where you learned to do all of the basics. It was powered by a KMB 40 torpedo, and I was using a digital proportional F710 six-channel radio, which was a pretty hot number back in the day. The other photo you have up there, that's me with my very first RC trainer, which is an Andrews A-Ray, and it's at the Danbury Airport, or not airport, Danbury High School and their athletic field. And I tell everybody with that photo that I'm telling the airplane where I want it to go, because I had very little control back in those days. So this is just me hoping for the best.
Okay, so you talked a little bit about how you got your start, and what segments of the hobby were you really drawn to once you got started?
But once I got started and I did all of the kind of the basic airplanes, I was like in 72, 73. I joined the Air Force in 1975, and I was stationed at Grissom Air Force Base, and there was nothing to do out in Indiana. So we started an RC club, and there I met a bunch of veteran sergeants and so forth that were very much into the hobby. And that's where I kind of learned the inner workings of RC airplanes and how to actually build properly, and how to avoid making the mistakes. I built several junior Falcons, Carl Goldberg kits, Cox 049 powered, and two-channel radios, three-channel radios with, if you remember, the Cox Cobra and the whole Cox series of 27 megahertz radios. And we had a very good time. And I worked my way up from there to a Midwest little stick. And that was the one I converted that from a trike gear to a tail dragger. And I still use the same KMB 40 engine, but I had a craft radio at that time, a craft sport radio. And that's the airplane that I brought home in 1979. from the military, and I was flying as best I can. I didn't belong to a club at the time, but before I went into the service, the club that I belonged to was the Fly RC Club, which is the Fairfield League of Yankee Radio Controllers, and my father was a member, a senior member, and I was, I always tagged along with him. And at that club meeting, that was like way before I went into the service, I met people who came to the club to give talks, and that included Walt Schroeder. And he was like, oh my God, that was like, this is the guy I read about. He's like, he's on the masthead of Model Airplane News. And my father and I, that's what we did. We did that. And of course, I was a member of the AMA. My father was too. And so that was back then. There was no internet or anything like that. So you waited with bated breath, for every issue to come every month. So that's kind of like, everyone, that's how it developed. As years went by, I really liked the bigger airplanes. They just started to be called giant scale, which is, 80-inch wingspans are larger for monoplanes and 60 inches are larger for biplanes. And of all of those, my ultimate favorite airplanes were biplanes, and I have built countless biplanes up until the point where the club that I belong to now, which is the Central Connecticut RC Club, we had for 10 years we had the Triple B, the BBB, which was the Big Biplane Bash. And so I was the CD for 10 years, and we had a great time. It was a great moneymaker for the club. And there weren't a lot of people into biplanes at the time. And so we invited people and things like that. And it kind of grew and grew and grew. And then to this day, still the club every September has the RC club event, for the biplane event. What you see on the screen right now is my latest project, which is a 27.5% scale Newport 24. And the reason I picked a Newport 24 is that everybody builds a Newport 11 or Newport 17, which is the kits that you can find. And so this is totally scratch built. I designed it with CAD. I have a laser cutter and a CNC in my workshop, so I was able to produce a kit and built it. And it's yet to be flown. So we're going to be, when I come back from Florida, I'm going to be doing some maiden flights on it and so forth. It's got an 87-inch wingspan. It's powered by an RCGF 50cc twin gas engine. I use Spectrum radio, and it's covered with scale stits and painted with polytone paint and so forth. All the coverings come from my buddies at where is it? Red 5 Design. They're out on Long Island, and they do really great graphics, and it's all stick-on vinyl. So it's one of my more scale airplanes. I mean, it has a full detailed cockpit with not instrument panel, but a cupboard that has all of the ammunition in it. It has a pilot seat, all of the things that you would see in there. So it's not precision scale. To me, it's very good sports scale. But I took the time to add all of the little eye candy that makes these airplanes so enjoyable to look at and so forth. And I'm sure it's going to fly very well. It weighs, I think, right around 21, 22 pounds. And so we're just looking for when I come back from my vacation, which I'll be leaving on next week. I'm going to go out there and have some fun, and hopefully we won't turn it back into a kit.
Right. Yeah. Well, I share your love of biplanes. Biplanes are my favorite. I've got a right above me is a 1/6 scale Sopwith pup, and right over there to my right is a now I just drew a blank, a pitch python. So
Oh,
I love as well. I love
nice.
biplanes, and I love World War I biplanes. In fact, I had it right here. We have a World War I airplane on the cover of the newest issue. I had it right here, but I guess I moved it. Um,
Oh, great.
so yeah, definitely a big fan of World War I. Here we go. Here's the cover.
Oh, nice.
Yep.
Very nice. Just like I was saying, that's what a Newport 17.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. They're Bolts USA. They make some of the best kits out there. And I built quite a few of them. And that was the reason why I was like, well, I got to do something different. It's like I'm one of these. I don't think I'm jaded at all, but there's just too many Piper Cubs and there's too many P-51 Mustangs out there. So when it comes to me for personal projects, I like to do unusual type of things, something that's out of the ordinary. Uh, doesn't mean that the other airplanes are not as good or anything like that. That's just me. One of the things that I guess got me the job in the first place with Model Airplane News was that I knew a lot about model airplane building. And I had been going since the 60s with my father to the Ram show, uh, Westchester County Aeromodelers Club in White Plains, New York. And from there, in fact, you can see right there, that's one of my first scale airplanes. That was the one after the, uh, the Clipwing Cub, that P-51 Mustang with the E2S on the side. That is the old original red box Top Flight kit. And boy, I made a lot of mistakes on it. But that was right in high school, 1973, 1974, and and here we are. This is at the Ram show. In fact, that was the last Ram show, I believe, that was down at the down in New Jersey at the Meadowlands, and I enjoyed going there all the time. And but throughout that experience, I learned and I met a lot of guys in the industry, Bob Walker from Robart, and on and on and on, and the people from Dubrow and the people from Sullivan, uh, you name it, and a lot of companies that aren't around anymore. And They hired me because they wanted someone who knew the industry, who knew the people, and who could make contacts and pick up the phone and talk to somebody on a personal level, like, hey, remember me from the Ram show, that type of thing. And they started sending me to the Toledo show as well, and it's it's wonderful. It pains me that we're now at a point where there are no Ram shows or Toledo shows anymore. Makes you wonder what's going to happen in the future. But the one thing that keeps going it's a common string is that all of the modelers, whether they're scale modelers, biplane, U control guys, free flight, whatever they are, they're all great people. They're all going to get together somehow, and they're all going to talk about modeling. So it's something that, to me, I would hope in the future, now that I don't have to go to work every day, I can do a little bit more to help on a local level, to make that happen.
Well, Gerry, it looks like you've got some family on the show. You've got Hi Dad from RJ Yarrish.
Ah, it's my daughter. Yay. Hi, Rebecca.
So when you started at Model Airplane News, I know your title when you retired was um, it was technical editor. What was your title when you first started? Was it technical editor then?
Well, for many years it was senior technical editor, but since there were no other technical editors there, they just put the senior in front of me to make me feel good. So when I first got hired, I was just an associate editor. I had I had a Brotherhood word processor. I didn't even have a computer. So it's like the first month that I was there was learning how to use the computer, and back then they were Apple computers, and it worked out okay. But it was a steep learning curve from senior or from an associate editor. I after a couple of years, they just promoted me to editor as an editor, not the editor. There's so many different levels. And then about 10 years in, they made me the technical editor because I knew everything. Basically, I was the guy in the office who could identify that radio or that engine, or look at an airplane and at least know who the designer was of that airplane or what kit it was built from, that type of thing. And So like the last 20 years out of the 31 and a half, I was the senior technical editor. It was a wonderful time. Deborah Cleghorn, the executive editor, and we've been a team for many years, and we're not gonna try and count how many years because that wouldn't be polite. But it was a wonderful time. Like I said, part of the joy, part of the get up every day and go to work. And back then, I was traveling 28 miles each way from New Milford, Connecticut to Wilton, Connecticut. And the reason to go there every day was the people, the staff, and learning and talking to people in the industry, and being uh, employed by a aeromodeling publication. One of the perks was that we learned of new products and new kits and new airplanes and new events and stuff before the regular readers did. And so that was really wonderful. It's like I can't think quickly enough on the top of my head, but uh, we had for a month before the first 2.4 gigahertz radios came out, and we had an operating one, and we were able to use that and learn all about it. And then we would, we wrote our initial uh, feelings for it. It wasn't an actual review, but it was a presentation to introduce it to the rest of the world, rest of the modeling community. And it was the same thing with like RC helicopters. Uh, the gas engines they developed incredibly well, and then several years ago, electrics became on the scene, uh, and now they're everything that we have now. It's just plug and play. It's really easy compared to 20 years ago. You had to be dedicated. You wanted to do something. You needed to invest time and effort. I mean, for my friends in the electric community, they had to know amps and voltage and this and that and the other, and how many amps their power system would develop, and so they could figure out if it had enough power to fly their airplanes. And so that was very interesting. I mean, I found that very interesting. And then of course they went from brushed motors to brushless motors and things like that. And then we went from NiCad batteries to the lithium batteries, the lipo batteries, and now we got the graphites and graphenes. I mean, and it's right now is really the golden age for our hobby, because anything you want. You can go to the hobby shop if there's a hobby shop in your town, and you can learn about anything. You know, if you need a trainer, there's countless foam and lightly built wood airplanes that you can learn how to fly on. Um, Clubs. I mean, that's probably to me that's one of the most important things that our hobby, our industry needs is a place to meet with other people in your local area. So you can learn from them. You can have a club to go to and fly from their flying field, things like that. A lot of the foamy ones, people fly, they call them backyard flyers and park flyers and things like that. But, eh, that's not the safest way to do it, because, who knows what dogs and cats and people are at the field. I've always been a proponent to join a club and fly at a regular AMA, licensed or however you want to call it, flying facility. So you don't have to worry about people walking under you while you're flying, things like that. Safety, number one. You don't want to hurt anybody while you're having fun.
XJet said, "Don't forget the internet and social media as well as other resources."
Oh, who said that?
XJet.
XJet. Oh yeah, it's very true. I mean, particularly too now that there's two magazines out there, Model Aviation and Model Airplane News here in the country. Very much so. There are online things. RC Universe was one of the first. That's where everybody went and posted their things. I go to RC Scale Builder. I learn so much from those people like that, and there's countless others. I don't have a list in front of me, but yeah, online you can go and type anything. You can go to Amazon and you can literally buy anything if you don't have a hobby shop near you. But it's always fun to go. If you get together with some of your friends and do a road trip and go to a local, semi-local, within 2 hours or 3 hours or whatever, go to a hobby shop somewhere and see what's going on. And the magazines are always great. One of the things that has kept Model Airplane News going and was, we used to, right from the very beginning, we used to publish scale plan, or not scale plans, but model building plans. In the early days in the 1930s and so forth, they were full size, and people would cut the pages out of the magazine, and they could build their free flight airplanes right there with reading the instructions in the article. In the last 30 years, we've published construction articles from all sorts of things, from sport flyers, scale airplanes, gliders, you name it, really. And that was another thing that was good and that kept me employed well, was that I was in charge of all of the plans and the articles to make sure, and that was the technical part of my title, was to make sure that whoever was writing the article knew what they were talking about. Was the servos that he was recommending the right size, roughly, to fly the airplane properly? Was the electric motor or the engine adequate, and things like that? And we would work back and forth with the designer slash author of the article, and we would come together and put together a really good article that all but guaranteed the reader success if he was going to build that. Back in those days, we got drawings on brown paper bags, and we would send them to a guy named Joe DeMarco, and he was a legend, and he would take whatever we sent him and he would put it underneath vinyl, or no, what do they call that? Not vinyl.
Vellum.
Vellum, that's it. And he would draw all of that stuff, and and make the plans as pretty and as accurate as they could be. There's a lot of old plans still available at modelairplanenews.com. Oh, there was a little commercial, but both Model Aviation and Model Airplane News sell the plans from their library online, and you can get those fairly easy. Ours are at airagestore.com, and you can order online with a credit card and things like that. And I'm sorry I don't have the Model Aviation website, but it's what is it? Modelaircraft.org. And
Yeah,
then
modelaircraft.org is our main site, and you can go to the plans right from there. Yes.
yeah, so
Or
so those
modelaviation.com, the magazine website, you can go to plans from there.
yeah, and so it's still important, to build an airplane with your own hands and things like that. At least it is for me. In fact, I build. I'm the first to admit that I build more than I fly. I should fly more than I have been, but being retired now, I hope that I can. And like you said, I mean, my main interest now today and going forward has been World War One, and my favorite airplane up until this point has been my 1/3 scale Fokker triplane, and I built that in 2012 from a Balsa USA kit, and it's 10 years old now, and I competed with it at Top Gun in 2016 and was not last place. So we'll leave it at that. So we did pretty good. But I love the biplanes, and except for having to build more than one set of wings, they got a lot of good traits that make them, good sport flyer airplanes. The modern, like you were saying, your Model 12 pits and things like that, have very light wing loading, and so they're very, very forgiving when you fly them and so forth. So if you like aerobatics, or if you like scale, if you like pattern airplanes, they even have biplane pattern airplanes. I love them, because they're just so predictable and very solid. They fly through the air and handle the wind pretty good. So, and giant scale just makes everything that much better.
Well, another Yarrish chimed in. Anita says, I love red. Every plane is better in red.
This is very true. Yeah, very, very true. Pit specials are red. The triplane is red. The only one that she didn't really like was my Sopwith Camel, which was, how should I put it? Poop brown, as she put it. So, but yeah, it was, they got to be red. They fly better when they're red.
So, Gerry, have you ever worked in a hobby shop?
I never have. No, I've known several people who've owned hobby shops, and I've gone to hobby shops, and I've given talks and things like that about building airplanes and things like that, just to help bring people in, on slow Wednesday nights or something like that. But I've never worked in one, actually. Like I said, 31 and a half years I've been working at the magazine, so that kept me pretty busy.
It's quite an experience, like you said about, and working in the magazine, you would find out about press releases and new products before the readers would. And obviously in a hobby shop, you know about the products. But I remember at my father's hobby shop that when you'd get a whole bunch of boxes delivered by FedEx or UPS or whatnot, it was like Christmas breaking into them, because you didn't necessarily know what was in there. And new kits and engines and different things, or surface vehicles or whatnot. And I remember when the mini ultra stick came out, We got three of them in, and I was able to get one of the three. That the night it was delivered, I had the mini Ultra Stick from Horizon Hobby as an example. So, there's a lot of neat excitement about that, and of course, talking the hobby with people and helping people, just like we do in the magazines. I mean, we help people, and we try to print stuff that educates and furthers our hobby. And thinking about that, Gerry, in 31 and a half years, I mean, there's been a lot of changes, as you mentioned, in our hobby. What would you say for you are the top three advances in technology in the 31 and a half years? For you, what would you pick as the top three advances in our hobby?
I would say number one was the switch from tissue and silk span to monocoat. That was the first one. That was amazing for its day. That was, I would say, that was mid 60s, something like that. And I remember going to the Ram Show with my father, and they used to give out free samples. They give you like a 1 square foot piece that you could go home and play with. And so I would keep going back to the booth, and I've had some really weird looking airplanes that were covered with all sorts of different colors of Monaco. And but yeah, that would be the first one. The second one, I think, was the introduction to instant glues, CA glues, where we still use, 15-minute and 1 hour epoxy, things like that. But Ambroids and Elmer's glue and things like that. And the big one was Zap, who first really came out and sold it as a hobby product. There were other companies that first came out. Rocket City, I think, had Hot Stuff. I think that was the really first one, and it came out in like a 5 gram little tiny bottle. And we used to just, we were getting ourselves in trouble and gluing our fingers together and things like that. But that really changed the way we built airplanes. We used to, do something, and you were limited by the dry time from the glue. And I think the airplanes were also, once the CA glue came about and became a regular thing, it changed the way the models, the kits, were actually designed. They were more like fit together and then use the thin CA to basically weld the pieces together. And so I would say that would be the second one. The third one, which would be more recent, but still 15 years or more ago, would be CAD and laser cutting. And that totally changed the look of kits, wooden kits and things like that, back when they were die cut, and everyone used to call them die crunch,
Right.
because it was very expensive for manufacturers to make new dies and things like that. So near the end of their useful life, the kits were terrible. But CAD came along, and that was a breakthrough, really. And parts, you could save parts that you drew and save them, and then it took less and less time to draw or put together a set of plans, and then manufacturing those plans into a kit. You could take those pieces and you could arrange the parts, so it would fit on a 4 by 28 inch piece of balsa wood and things like that. And I would think that really went a long way, because the quality of the end product, the model, was almost guaranteed. You put the things together, and like you say, it was then lock tab construction became a thing because of the accuracy that they were able to manufacture things with. So you could literally put the airplane together in your hand, or the part, and then just tap, 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 with the thin glue. So those worked hand in hand to really give us, all but guarantee that you were going to have a nice airplane. It was going to be straight. It would be lightweight. That was another thing that CAD and laser cutting developed. Is a lot of giant scale airplanes too. They'd cut like 5 or 6 pounds out of the airplanes by making them so intricate that you couldn't do that by hand, but it was easy with laser cutters and with CAD. The only problem when that was is they weren't all that rugged. I mean, back in the day, our heavy trainer airplanes could bounce, and you could like wipe the dirt off of them, and then you could go fly again or straighten the landing gear, and you were good to go. But that doesn't happen nowadays. Nowadays you can damage your airplane pretty good because there's just not a lot of meat in there, and so it's a trade-off between a really good flying qualities because of light wing loading and being able to survive punishment.
I
So
love
I
the
would say
fact.
those are the three that I think.
I love the fact that all three of the ones you chose had to do with building airplanes, covering, glue, and the way the kits are manufactured. Because for me, I would echo what you said, but one of the things that you didn't say that probably would be on my list of three is 2.4 gigahertz. The
Yeah, yeah.
frequency freedom. I think that would be on my list. I was at CEF when they set the Guinness World Record and had 99 airplanes. I mean, we started with I think 107, but 99 airplanes ended the flight. It had to be like a minute and a half or 2 minutes. I was one of the 99. That never could have happened before 2.4 gigahertz. There wouldn't have been enough frequencies available. Or at AMA, we've got 7 flying sites, and you go and fly at any of them, and you don't have to worry. And if you're on 72, you can go to the show center site 3 because there is still a frequency board, but the chances of anybody else flying 72 is pretty few and far between. So but I mean, I love the fact that all three of yours were around building, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, no, that's very true. I wasn't thinking broad enough, but yeah, the broad spectrum, or the hopping, the frequency hopping, and things like that. We take it for granted now. I don't think you can buy a 72 megahertz radio, or certainly I don't think you can buy a 27 megahertz unless it's like maybe a toy kind of thing. But yeah, like the others, like you said, the radios, the battery
Lipo, yeah.
technology that's really developed. I mean, that made the airplane lighter, had more power, and would last longer. The engine, or the same thing with the electric brushless motors. They're just amazing. And like I said, we're at a point now where it's just plug and play. You why would you want to do what I love to do? Why would you design an airplane? Why would you go through the trouble of putting it together and figuring out how big the electric motor should be and the battery pack, and on and on and on, unless you really want to? I mean, that's where you get your jollies, doing all that stuff, but you don't have to, and that's the point. You can go look online. I was going to say get the SIG catalog, but I don't think they have the SIG catalog anymore. But the ARFs, those are another thing. I mean, we moved from kits, we moved from scratch building from off of plans to kits, to really nice kits, to ARFs, almost ready to fly airplanes, to ready to fly airplanes, to bind and fly airplanes, to it's and now the high end of the composites, the jets, the turbine engines, the huge giant scale warbirds that use up to 400 cc radial engines. Like I said much earlier, I think that we are enjoying a golden age for our industry for sure, because even drones. I mean, I have a couple of drones. I enjoy them a lot. It's They're certainly a lot easier to fly than RC helicopters are, that's for sure. But with the cameras and so forth, onboard cameras and things like that, and video, that's another whole aspect that you can enjoy. Um, like I said, there's no limit to what you can choose to do. It's all out there. In fact, someone new going in, one of the things that you need to learn is what's out there before, it's like, I want to learn how to. I lost you. Oh, there you go.
You're
Everybody
back.
went blank for a second. Well, I was just going to say that's again, that brings you back to joining a club, an RC club, and
Yeah, that's
the
huge.
social connection.
That's huge. Yeah. Well, not only the innovation, you talk about it being the golden age, but not just innovation, but cost. It's a lot less expensive to get started.
Oh yes.
So that's big as well. I wanted to touch on something that XJet said. He said, "What are the worst changes we've seen in the hobby in the past 20 years?" For me, I would say, unfortunately, the hobby shops closing. There's less hobby shops. Some communities don't have a hobby shop. That's one. And also, a lot of the magazines going away. I mean, as you mentioned earlier, Gerry, it's just really model airplane news and model aviation here in the U.S. And there was at least a dozen magazines when I started 14 years ago. And, over your time of 31 and a half years, you've seen a ton of magazines come and go. So those are some of the unfortunate changes, I think. And also, it's sad to see some of the companies go away, like Model Aero. They made great innovative products. And, unfortunately, there's a handful of companies that are no longer producing models. I mean, beyond what I mentioned, I mean, what would you say as far as the worst things that have happened in the last 20 years for our hobby?
Well, yeah, I would definitely agree. I want to think about it a little bit as we chatter here, but yeah, the hobby itself, the industry itself, really contracted, I would say, and it started about 10 years ago, and that's when the magazines started. Well, 2008 also, that was the big blow up on the stock market and so forth. And a lot of companies, a lot of little mom and pop hobby shops and stuff like that, they just went out of business. There was no financial help for them at the time. And I can remember growing up, and oh my God, there was in Connecticut. I live in Connecticut. We would go to Massachusetts, we go to Rhode Island, we would go to New York and Long Island. There was hobby shops everywhere. You couldn't throw a stone without hitting somebody's block that had a hobby shop in it. So that was one. That was like in the beginning, and then the magazines followed suit, and that's the tightening of the money in the world anyway, because we started losing advertisers, and without advertisers, you can't produce quality magazines, and as the quality of your magazine suffers, then you start losing readers, and so it's a vicious circle. And I think everybody that's out and about still, model airplane news, model aviation, and I'm sure there's some overseas in the UK and so forth. Uh, the reason they're still around is because they were very, very frugal, very, very careful about their spending and uh, about their business model, so forth. And the people in the companies that didn't have, you know, the thought about, should we have online content, should we have, digital magazines and so forth and things like that. If they didn't think about that 10 years ago, they were gone. Um, the big one for me was, I mean, obviously, I was working in model airplane news, so I wanted that to stay there forever. But when RCM, Radio Control Modeler magazine, that was the big thick one. That was everyone got that magazine. That was kind of the what was it? The catalog for the whole industry, because there were just so many advertisers in there, and you could get that one magazine and you would know most everything about our hobby. So that, and I see that because of online stuff, I think the quality of some of the kits that you can buy at a cheap price online aren't really the greatest in quality. Uh, they you get what you pay for kind of type of thing, and so um, you can't blame anybody who'd rather spend $150 than $450, for an airplane. The same thing with radios. $800 radios are kind of the high end for sport flying. I wouldn't spend $69 for an airplane or for a airplane radio. Same thing with the servos. $200 servos, to me, that's extravagant. I think like right around $40-50 for servos is a good price. So the cheap ones, $12 servos, I don't even look at them. But it all depends on what type of airplane you're flying too. If you're flying a foam airplane, $12 servos are fine. The airplanes I fly, I want a little more. I want a little more security in it that way. So again, and that thing, it brings you to the hobby shop where you want to talk to people that know what you want. The ARFs, when they first came out, you remember Lanier RC? They had airplane, their line, and it's like the Stingers, just as an example. Those were not ARFs, but they were sold as ARFs, because they had so many plastic parts that you still had to trim and put together and things like that. But for me personally, I love kit building. I'm not really into composites and construction, but a lot of the airplanes that you see in competition nowadays, that's what they are. They're manufactured. The modeler has built a plug, a master airplane, and built molds, and from those molds produces the parts and put them together, and they're absolutely spectacular. It's just not for me. It's like I want to build my airplane. It's like, over a winter or a winter and a half, and then go out and go flying. Some of these guys have got 7-8 years invested in developing their airplanes, and it's the upper echelon. I give them a lot of credit. I don't have it. I don't have it in me. I can make fiberglass cowl. I can make wheel pants and things like that. But that's about where it stops for me anyway.
So, for those that might not have read it, I interviewed you a year or two ago for I Am the AMA, and the last question I asked you was, looking back at all your time, working in the hobby, your time with Model Airplane News, what are you most proud of? So now that you've bookended it, you've retired, and for those that didn't read that issue or missed that issue, looking back, Gerry, over 31 and a half years supporting this hobby with Model Airplane News, what are you most proud of?
Wow. Don't ask difficult questions or anything like that. I have a story. I can tell you a story, and it can kind of put it into focus what I'm most proud of. 20 years ago or so, I was going to trade shows on a regular basis, and I felt like, I'm Gerry Yarrish. I know it all. They send me to trade shows. I must be pretty good. And then there was this guy who kept coming to our booth, and he would stay to the side and didn't really come forward and talk to us and so forth. And I thought to myself, oh, it's one of those weirdos. I don't know. what this guy is going to do. And it went on for, it was like Friday, and then he came back Saturday. And then it's not a high point of me. I like kind of snapped at him and I go like, what do you want? Can I help you? What do you want? And the guy had a model airplane news in his hand, and he said, are you Gerry Yarrish? And I went, yes, I am. And he goes, I love everything that you've written. I love all your articles and stuff. Would you please give me your autograph? And I was like, oh my God, what an asshole I am. Oh, I'm sorry. What an idiot I am. And that was a learning moment. I made it a learning moment for myself. And from that day forward, I never took myself so personal, so serious. And I would say that the most proud thing that I can say is that I was put in a place where I was able to talk and communicate with other people who love our hobby, love model airplane building in general. And it's been a privilege of me to get all of the information and all of the stuff that's in our hobby and present it in a way that made it easy for people to read, people to learn, and to improve their own hobby, their own skills and things like that. And I think that's probably it. I wrote a book in the 1990s, getting started in radio control airplanes. And recently, like 2010, 2008, something like that, we did a second volume of it. And it breaks everything down, and it helps people painlessly or with much less pain get into our hobby. And I would say that's probably it. My self-learning of everything and how little importance I am on a personal level, and how much I was able to help people that I don't even know who they are or anything like that. But I was able to make our hobby better, to get people interested that might not otherwise have been interested in our hobby. So I don't know what I said in your interview, but that's what it is now.
Well, I think you make a good point is that we don't know, like in your 31 and a half years and in my 14 years, we don't know how many people we've impacted. I mean, we hear stories like that's another great thing about the trade show or flying events. It's a great time to meet, AMA members and readers and for you readers of your magazine. And they tell you, love that story, love this article, love this issue, love all your issues. I mean, so it's great, but we have no way of really knowing how many people that we've impacted or how many people hopefully we've advanced in the hobby or helped in the hobby or, kept them from giving up the hobby. So, we it's great when we do hear these stories. And to be honest with you, I've been asked to autograph, I think 3 times I've been asked to autograph. So I know it seems kind of interesting. And I'm an autograph collector, actually. I collect musician autographs, and I just got Vincent Price's autograph just recently, as an example, and Roddy McDowell, who I was
Oh,
talking
how
about.
great.
Yeah. So,
Great.
but one time I was
Very
at
good.
one
I
time I was
have,
at Toledo. I was just gonna say one time I was at Toledo, and
go
at the
ahead.
3D Hobby Shop booth, they had people were coming up and asking Scott Stoops to autograph their 3D Hobby Shop airplane because he designed it, and then
Oh, sure.
it,
Yeah.
and then Andrew Jeske as well because he was designing for 3D Hobby Shop for a while, and I just think anytime that we have a chance to hear the hopefully positive impact we have is great. I think we should also talk really briefly. We've been talking for over an hour now, but I think we should talk really briefly about what you're doing in the future. But before we do, Greg Gimlick said that what you should be proud of over 31 and a half years is surviving. That was his comment.
Greg Gimlick, he's a wonderful guy. He's one of those electric guys that I met through the magazine, through the hobby, and I'm happy to call him one of my best friends. he taught me a lot of stuff about electric flying. That's for sure, batteries and so forth. We got a lot of stories from a lot of KRC was one of them, and it's again, it's that personal touch. I would say you were talking about your collection of autographs. One of my first ones was Nick Zeroli Sr. I got him, and Jim Newman, who used to write for our magazine for, or not write, but he was the illustrator for our magazine for many, many, many years. And who else? Who else? Someone. Well, Walt Schroeder. That was my very first one. So again, all of my stuff has just been in the hobby and things like that. Hazel Sig. I got her. She autographed my Sig catalog when I was like 16 or 17 years old. So I think she's like, what is she? Did she have a 100th
She's
birthday?
100. Yeah, she turned
Yeah,
100 last month,
that's
right?
crazy.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
wonderful. God bless her.
Well, I have a lot of people on the hobbies autographs too. When we did our 75th anniversary event, I got every person in the AMA Hall of Fame. They invited as many Hall of Famers that could come, and I got every single AMA Hall of Famer who was present for our 75th anniversary. I got them to autograph the. We had like a commemorative brochure for the 75th, and I had them all sign it. But so let's touch on really quick. So obviously, your passion for the hobby is still there and you're still going to be involved. So for people that are curious now that you've retired from Model Play News, what's next? What, I mean, I know you're going to do a road trip and attend
Yeah.
some events, but so what's next for Gerry Yarrish?
Well, that's they say that the best thing about retirement is that you have more time on your hands, but trying to figure out what you can do with that time can be challenging. But the first thing that I've planned, I mean, I've never really had the opportunity to go to scale events or to go to RC competition without having my camera and taking notes and interviewing people and all of that. And so I'm leaving this coming Monday, and I'm taking a road trip, and we're going to go down to Top Gun and just be a spectator. Here you can see me and Deborah Cleghorn at Top Gun. That's how we would see an event, and so it kind of you have a narrow view, and so I'm looking forward to seeing people and sitting down and having a soda and talking with them and not being in a rush and like, oh, somebody just took off, I got to go run and get a picture of him and stuff like that. So that's the important thing for me that I'm going to enjoy. And I'm making it a road trip, so I'm going to go from Top Gun, which is starts on the 26th, and then from there I'm going up to visit some friends, other RC modelers up in Tennessee. I'll spend some time there, just personal time, and then from there we're going to go do east, and I'm going to go to Joe Neal and spend 4 or 5 days there, and just enjoy myself and meet up with some friends. Sal Calvagna is going to be there. I think he's covering it for Model Aviation, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
And so we're going to get together. We're going to have dinner there and just kind of hang out and do the big famous barbecue. And then I'm going to head home without an agenda. I might stop in Washington, D.C. and take in some of the museums, and then come home. But once I'm home and once I catch up with yard work and things like that, house repairs and so forth, I'm going to get into really being able to put serious hours into my workshop. My Newport 24 that we talked about earlier, I mean, that's going on 2 years and it hasn't flown yet. So I look forward to finishing that project and doing a few things that I've been thinking about, haven't done yet. I have a vintage Midwest AT6 Texan kit that's about 40% built. I want to finish that and install flaps on it because that was one airplane that cried out it needed flaps for decent landings. And I am contemplating designing another biplane, and that's going to be a Fleet Model 1, 1/3 scale, and I'm going to copy it after one of the newer airplanes that are at Old Rhinebeck Aerodrome. And that's my given, my list of things that I'll always do is I always go to the World War One jamboree at Old Rhinebeck Aerodrome. I'm going to be going to. Yep, those are. I've been doing their their plaques and their awards for several years with my laser cutter, and it's from 2019, 2021. I'm also going to be going to Warbirds over Delaware and meet up with those guys down there, and I might even. Probably not this year, but next year I might attend the AMA Scale Nationals because I haven't done that ever, and so that would be a check, one of my bucket list things. So there's plenty to do, and like I said, I just don't know where the time went. I really don't. I'm in good health, relatively good health, and so I'm looking forward to building a lot of more airplanes, traveling, visiting with my friends, and might even come up and visit you there at the AMA headquarters.
Yeah, you absolutely should. I understand what you mean about viewing an event through the lens. I mean, I remember, you and I have been at the same event a few times too, and we get about 5 minutes to talk, and then we both got to go take pictures, or we got to track down somebody to get information about their aircraft because we want to have caption info and info for the article. So yeah, it's definitely a different experience. But I think we're gonna have to wrap up here, but I think it's important to say that. And I'm sure I'm speaking for everyone, Gerry. Really appreciate your friendship and everything that you've done for the hobby with Model Airplane News, and in your personal life. And I'm excited for your next your next adventures, and hopefully get to see at some of these events. I'll still have to keep running away and taking pictures and getting captions, but at least you can sit there and enjoy it, and I can come find you when I have a few spare minutes. But thanks so much for your friendship and everything, your support of AMA and the magazine, and everything that you've done.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. I don't know what I would have done uh, if I didn't have this job. I don't know any other passion. I mean, like my family scuba dives, and so maybe that would have been something that I would have pursued. But my whole life, I've loved model airplanes, and it's just been a wild, great ride. I've made a lot of friends. I'm seeing here these people that are commenting on, and it's been a lot of fun. The people, the experience, everything. I'm a lucky guy. I was the luckiest guy in the world to get the job that I had.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk a little bit about our next show. I think we're going to have the date on the screen probably. There it is. So I don't have to look it up. It's Friday, May 20th will be the next Model Aviation Live. And I already have the guests lined up, so I'm happy to share with you. We're going to have John Bristow on from Deluxe Materials. We're going to talk a lot about his company and his products, and the things that he's doing to try to make safe products for modelers and environmentally safe products. So I hope everybody can join us Friday, May 20th for the next show. Gerry, thanks so much for your time today. Looking forward to seeing you at some of these events in the future, and hope to see everyone next month for the next Model Aviation Live.
Very good. Take care.